Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the SWestrans Board, Friday the 27th of June 2025. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded and the public recording will be made available on the website for public listening following this meeting. Remote participants on Teams, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Write and speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute, but I will also look out for the virtual hand. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. Please speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. So we'll now move on to agenda item 1, which is the Sederant and apologies.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I can advise we've currently got 3 board members present, being yourself and Ivor Hislop in the hall here, and Councillor Scobie present on Teams. Councillor Scobie is substituting for Councillor Dickie Campbell, who's an apology, and we also have an apology from Stephanie Mottram. The Vice Chair, Karen Jackson, David Ingalls and Keith Walters are currently not present. For clarity, I should say there was a decision taken at full council, Dumfries and Galloway Council yesterday, which changed the membership of SWestrans. So Councillors Jim Dempster and Councillor Willie Scobie have been replaced as full board members by Councillors David Ingalls and Dickie Campbell. Councillor Scobie, as you see today, remains as a substitute board member. We also welcome Maureen Johnston back to SWestrans as a substitute board member, and there remains a as yet unknown substitute board member on behalf of Dumfries and on behalf of the independent group at the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Councillor Scobie, I did see your hand going up and then back down again. Was it on the same point?
It was, Chair, and Claire covered it. I'm substituting for Dougie Campbell today, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I would like to welcome Councillors Ingalls and Campbell as 2 new board members, and also Councillor Johnson as a substitute. I would also like to thank Councillor Dempster for his contributions to the board. So with that, we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the declarations of interest. Do any board members have any declarations they wish to make? No, I don't see any. So before we start the items of business for today, I can advise that item 19 on the published agenda, Local Bus Network Procurement Update, has been withdrawn by the lead officer. As this was to be taken as an exempt item, 18, the exclusion of the press, public and observers is also withdrawn from today's agenda. So moving on to today's business. Agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting on the 28th of March 2025. Are board members happy to approve? I'll take silence as acceptance. Move on to agenda item 4, which is the minute of previous meeting on the 6th of June. Board members happy to approve? Got agreement in the room. Silence is acceptance online. So we'll now move on to agenda item 5, which is the local bus network update. Board members will have received a supplement pack with this report yesterday. We have the lead officer Simon Bradbury and Karen Brownlee and Gordon Bryce from Dumfries and Galloway Council to assist with this report. So I'll start with you, Simon. Is there anything else to add to the report? And then I'll ask Karen and Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. No, nothing further to add to the report from me at this point.
Thank you very much. Karen?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing further from me. Thank you.
Gordon?
Thanks, Chair. Nothing further from me either.
Thank you very much. So I'll open it up to the floor. Any members got questions? Or I've got Willis Colby online, and then I'll come to you, Councillor Heslop.
Thanks, Chair. I'm looking at this report. I'm looking at 4.5 of the report. And it's really just to ask the question. It was raised at the last meeting in terms of this operator of last resort. Given yesterday's decision to look at establishing a council-run bus operation, will this change the position in regards to that as an operator of last resort if the council do determine that it's going to operate a licensed service? That's my first question. But the really more important question is around Chippy, and I did have conversation with Simon in terms of our legal obligation, and if not legal obligation, then at least the moral responsibility in terms of any drivers that find themselves in that invidious position of receiving redundancy notices or being paid off. Is there any further update on the legal advice that Simon referred to myself that he was taking on this matter?
Thanks, Councillor Scobie. Simon, I'll bring you in. I don't know if Karen wants to come in as a follow-up, but I'll bring you in first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your question, Councillor Scobie. Certainly happy to pick up on both of those queries you raised, and very happy to hand over to my colleagues, Karen or Gordon, in the chamber to follow up. So on the first point, obviously, as you'll be aware, and as the board paper summarises, the procurement exercise for the subsidised network is essentially now at a point where it's closed. We've awarded contracts, as the board heard at the previous board, and we're now in a position of essentially managing the situation that we find ourselves in with Stagecoach having notified us and made the decision to withdraw from the region. So in that, we're still in the position with the date having passed just yesterday, whereby there are 42 days between now and between yesterday and the point of the 6th of August when existing routes come to an end. And we're exploring all opportunities in terms of understanding what interest and potential there is for commercial operators to step in and continue to operate on routes across the region on a commercial basis. So the council and SWestrans have a relatively hands-off role in that it's not for us to put in place those commercial routes. Rather, it's for us to advertise the opportunities, make available data relating to those commercial routes, and then wait and see what commercial operators might wish to fill those routes. And for the time being, that's essentially the space that we're in. However, having said that, clearly there's contingency planning going on in the background, which includes the potential for DGC buses as operator of last resort to step in and support and operate those routes. But at this point in time, until more time has passed, and that won't be till next week, which will be the point at which we'll start to have an understanding of whether or not any commercial operators have stepped in, we won't be in a position to make any decisions in relation to DGC buses and the extent to which its operator of last resort role, or indeed any role which brings it to intervene into the market any more than that, and we won't be in a position to clarify until that point is reached. Just to touch upon your question in relation to 2P, again, just want to reassure yourself, Councillor Scobie, and the board that we are in frequent contact with Stagecoach and having discussions with them in relation to their existing employees, particularly drivers, and the potential for 2P transfer of those drivers. At this point in time, Stagecoach is still clarifying their legal position, and we're still in discussion, including through Dumfries and Galloway Council's legal team as well. And until that exercise, until that dialogue is completed with the two representative legal teams, we're not in a position to be able to give you a precise figure in terms of the number or possibility of 2P transfer. But all I can say is that we're we're working hand in glove with Stagecoach, and I wish to reassure you as much as possible that we're doing all that we can to provide reassurance and certainty for Stagecoach drivers.
Thanks, Simon. So has that been helpful, Willie?
Yeah, it's been helpful, but you know, there's a great deal of anxiety and worry here with the drivers, Stagecoach drivers, and whether they will qualify for TUPE transfer or not. And it's really, Simon, to give, if you're able, to give some indication as to how long. I did hear yesterday that notices have been served, redundancy notices have been served. So it's really to get to that point where the drivers have some degree of certainty as to what's happening. I've spoken to the full-time officer with Unite, and they are pursuing the issue. So I would hope that we're having discussions with the trade unions to try and find or get to a point where we can unequivocally state what's happening with TUPE or not, because it is a worrying time for drivers out here. So maybe, Simon, if you could give us some indication of just how long this is going to take, or a rough estimate as to how long this might take, other than, I know how long's a piece of string, but can we get some kind of indication for the board, and for the more so for the drivers and other staff out there that are employed by Stagecoach? Just another supplementary, because I think things in the west of the region may have changed again with a contractor. And have we got the capacity and the capabilities?
Can I just come in on that? If there's further information that's to do with confidentiality, I think we'll just have to leave it there. This is a public forum. We do sympathise as a board. I think everybody in the room would agree with your sentiments about what's happening with drivers, etc. But these things are out with the responsibilities of the board. Although Simon has gave some assurance, and I've got Karen Brownlee, who probably would like to assist with that. But I don't know if you want to continue, Simon, on some of those aspects that Councillor Scobie was mentioning, but we have to sort of differentiate. This is a public forum, and even though the things are happening elsewhere, we have to be very careful that we don't talk about confidentiality. So I'll bring Simon back in, and then I'll go to Karen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your supplementary, Councillor Scobie, because I do completely recognise the degree of uncertainty and anxiety that exists for Stagecoach staff in the west of the region, and we are all too aware of that and are doing all that we can within the confines of the necessary legal responsibilities that we have and the criteria that need to be met in order for TUPE to apply. So it was towards the beginning of this week, we've been in constant dialogue with Stagecoach, but it was towards the beginning of this week that they came to us with their initial understanding of the degree to which TUPE may or may not apply. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to, in this forum, to give an indication of that until we've done our necessary due diligence and those two legal teams have continued to liaise with one another in order to understand what the final outcome will be in terms of numbers of drivers that will be TUPE transferred. But I think it's important to point out those criteria and the fact that it may very well be the case that not in all cases are they met, and so any expectation of all Stagecoach drivers being TUPE transferred should not be assumed at all at this point. But I completely appreciate that there is uncertainty, there's anxiety, and the more that time goes on, that's only going to increase. So we're doing all that we can in as compressed a timescales as we possibly can to try and provide that certainty and reassurance as best we can. But in terms of your question specifically about timescales, it's going to be relatively short because we're aware of the fact that there's a significant number of individuals who are facing this uncertainty, and we want to try and reach a conclusion on that as quickly as we possibly can.
Thanks, Simon. Karen?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Scobie, for your questions. I think without wanting to duplicate what Simon has laid out, I guess from my perspective, I just want to, I guess, reinforce to the board, give that assurance, give that confidence that we are working very closely with Stagecoach or Western buses. We are very aware of the uncertainty right across the region in terms of their employees and the future status of their current contracts. The issues are complex, and as Simon has stated, we are doing everything that we can in terms of, in conjunction with the council legal team and HR team and Stagecoach's legal team and HR team to work through a process. But we need to allow that process to work through. We need to allow Western buses to have those discussions with their staff first and foremost, and then we will be able to progress as required. Councillor Scobie mentioned in terms of joint trade unions, so just to give the assurance as well, we have highlighted the work that we are now progressing with the joint trade unions, and as soon as we have done our due diligence in terms of those contracts and what they look like going forward, we will continue to work with the joint trade unions from a council perspective and a SWestrans.
Again, after I've taken questions from Councillor Hislop.
Thanks, Chair.
Ivor?
Thank you, Chair. It's similar, but from possibly a different perspective. It's the commercial runs that really concern me. We've got 6 weeks or to find a replacement, or Dumfries, which is the largest town in the southwest of Scotland, might not have a bus service. Now, I'm not of the opinion that we won't do anything. I have fears that we might not be able to do things, because are we going to end up being held ransom through DGC buses, because we've only got 6 weeks to find vehicles to fill these routes, or we get Stagecoach coming in and said, I've got some old buses I can sell you, and they'll not be at the cheapest of price, it'll be as high as they can get for it. And we also had a paper yesterday that told us that we don't have capacity in our depots, and we would need, I don't know if it was all the depots, but there was definitely some of them across, if we were looking to set up a PSV section. Have we got capacity at Gareth, if it was there, to actually set up a service station for these buses, so that we can actually make sure that we deliver a service on the 7th or the 6th, whenever it starts, for the town centre? Because these are, yes, they're commercial routes and it's not our responsibility, but these are routes that are actually used by people, possibly more than the subsidised routes, because of the fact that subsidised need money to make them viable. These are commercial. And are we going to end up on the 6th with no buses in Dumfries town centre?
Thanks, Ivor. Gordon, I'll bring you in.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your question, Councillor Hislop. So to address the first point of that then, these are commercial routes. Part of the work that the project team is doing in line with procurement is packaging that work up and making operators aware of it. We need to allow operators time to digest that data and that information, and allow them to make their business decisions whether they want to register for those routes. That's the first part. That's ongoing at the moment. However, part of the mitigation to that, as you rightly said, is DGC buses. Now, DGC buses can operate in two ways. Currently, we operate under Section 46, which allows us to run between school runs, and that's a licence that's been granted by the Traffic Commissioner. The other way that we can operate is through a Permit 22, Section 22 permit, which allows us to run 7 days a week, which would allow us to step into that landscape, if you like. So we're working towards that. We are creating efficiencies within the team that will free up vehicles and staff if we need to step in to do something. We don't know what that something is yet, but we're making best plans to accommodate whatever might be needed, I suppose. So I think it's really important that members understand that there is two ways that we can operate. We don't need to go full PSV. Section 22 and what we do in Section 46 would cover us. And to answer your question on depots, there is capacity within depots, whether it's Harthill, whether it's Dumfries. You know, the Garach is a large site. There's other things happening at Garach within other services, which is going to create space. So we're planning to that degree. So just to give you some assurances that whatever it's going to take or whatever be needed for us to step into that role, but please be assured we're looking at it and planning for it.
Thank you. Willie, I did say I would ask you to come back in. I think you left your hand up.
Thanks, Chair, and I do recognise the sensitivity that you refer to, and I have no intention of breaching that. But there's huge concern. It is public knowledge that we discussed at the last meeting and made public that the council is picking up some of the services in the west of the region, both in Stranraer and the Rins and in the Machars. And I just would ask the question, are we confident that we are going to be able to, if there are no contractors to run the services in the west, is the council confident that we can pick up these services and provide for them by the council? And just to the point that Gordon was making there in terms of Section 46 and Permit 22, have we got the necessary licenses to operate these services? That's the ticket issuing, the picking up and everything else that goes along with that, which was a question asked to me.
Thanks, Willie. Gordon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Scobie. Without repeating too much to the answer to Councillor Hislop, that's exactly what we're planning towards. We anticipated the procurement exercise not going wholly to planned some months ago, and we applied to the Traffic Commissioner for Section 22 permits. We have them in place and they're ready to go for when and where we need them.
Willie?
Just a question about the confidence in west of the region. That was a concern that we expressed at the last board meeting, that we were able to provide council buses, the new electric buses to be diverted to Stranraer. The numbers weren't mentioned, but are we still confident we can pick up these services come the 6th, 7th August?
Gordon.
Through yourself, Chair. Councillor Scobie, but that's exactly what we're working towards. The electric buses will be ordered over the course of the next couple of weeks. There's at least 4 of them will be run in the west, in and around Stranraer. Through our normal transport asset class, the Council and SWestrans are both a combined unit within. There's also been 2 buses identified to be procured via that, which is well underway as well. So as well as existing fleet, new fleet coming in over the course of the next few weeks, and electric vehicles that are coming in up to the end of March with associated infrastructure, there'll be enough vehicles there to help support the network in the west.
And garages, Gordon, because we've got Whitthorn and Stranraer that provide garages. Sorry, Gordon.
No, you're fine. I forgot about depots, but yes. So without going into too much detail, we have a plan there to make some room at Culhorn Depot. Some months ago, I applied to the Traffic Commissioner to make the Zero Waste Park an operating base, so there's potential to move some refuse collections vehicles over there if we need to. There is absolutely space at Barnkirk Depot, and we are in discussions. There's an open discussion there with Stagecoach Western regarding the site at Whithorn, which does belong to the council.
Thank you. I do have an observer online. Welcome, Laura Moody. Would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Councillors Scobie and Hislop for their illuminating questions. They enabled me to tick some off my list. The question I have is in relation to 5.1, and it's to ask whether consideration has been given to working with local community councils, development trusts, or other community anchor organisations to support the updating of timetables across the region. I think this is an ongoing issue.
Thank you, Laura. Simon, I think you might be best placed to pick this one up.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Laura, for your question, which is very timely, in fact, because whilst clearly the project team responsible for the procurement exercise that's now coming towards an end, and as we've heard from Gordon and Karen, the fallout of that to some extent in terms of the withdrawal of the Stagecoach and the commercial routes has certainly occupied our minds and kept the team busy. But at the same time, we're also well aware of the fact that the 6th of August and the 7th of August, the commencement date of the new contracts is only 6 weeks away. And it's important that we make sure that the travelling public are aware of any changes which have come about through that procurement process, which, as we've said previously, we're very pleased in terms of the extent to which that the subsidised network and the procurement of that has culminated in the point that largely the entirety of the network has been procured. Nonetheless, there will be some changes. There's some changes in terms of individual timings, small elements of routes, but a number of routes in which the exact timings will have changed, and we're committed to try and ensure all that we can do to make sure that the travelling public are aware of those. So clearly digital methods are the ones that are the easiest. We'll absolutely ensure that the updated timetables are available on the website. We'll advertise the changes through social media, through press release. We'll ensure that the updated bus passenger information is referred to Travelline, so that all digital methods by which updated information is available. The area you touch upon is certainly the most challenging. More than 1,000 bus stops across the region, which will, in many cases, then have timetable information which is out of date. And in terms of your suggestion around understanding the degree to which community councils and others can support, that's absolutely something that we've thought of. And in fact, just over the course of the last week, we've been in touch with them to try and understand what support they can give. That's a conversation that's still in progress, but we're meeting again next week to try and understand exactly what that process will be to get as much updated information out there in the community as possible, and the degree to which we can rely upon the support of the community themselves in that endeavour, which is a logistical challenge to say the least.
Thanks, Simon. Has that been helpful, Laura?
Yes, thank you. That's really helpful. It's good to know that discussions are already happening on that front.
Thank you very much. I don't have anyone else wishing to speak, so we'll go to the recommendations. So members of the board are asked to 1, note the outcome of the procurement process to award contracts for the bus network, and 2, agree the proposed changes to services and timetables set out in section 3 above. We're happy to do so. Willie, you want to come back?
Yeah, please, Chair, and I would just add that maybe it goes without saying, but the board be kept advised on changes or outcomes or discussions regarding Chippy as soon as these happen, if that could be done, Chair.
Yeah, well, I don't know who, Simon or Karen, is it possible to keep the board up to date?
Absolutely, Chair. Councillor Scobie, I don't see any reason at all why we can't ensure that we keep you abreast of the situation and also the board. So once we have further clarity, we'll make sure that we communicate that with you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Simon.
Chair. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, Simon, and I'm getting nods from Karen as well. So with that, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is Active Travel Behaviour Change Fund 2025-2026. We have Peter McCormack here to assist with this report. So Peter, is there anything to add to your report?
Nothing more to add, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I'll open it up to members. Any questions, comments? Don't see anyone online. Nobody in the room. Well, with that, we'll just go to recommendations. So members of the board are asked to, 1, note the outcomes of the 2024-25 programme and the continued evolution of the funding model, and 2, note progress in the delivery of the 2025-26 programme outlined in the report. Happy to note. Yep. With that, we go to agenda item 7. Solway Coast and Marine Project Update. We have Brian Scott from SCAMP here to assist. Firstly, can we deal with the first recommendation, which is to agree to receive a presentation from Dumfries and Galloway Council Countryside Team Leader on the successful Solway Coast and Marine Project (SCAMP) Landscape Connections Project submission. So are we happy to do that? Receive a, yep, get nods in the room. So over to you then, Brian.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to do a verbal presentation, basically, just to update what's in the paper already. The Solway Coast and Marine Project, Coastal Connection, Landscape Connections, is a potentially £20 million, 10 to 15-year project, and with the aim of protecting, restoring, investing in the coast and marine natural assets and coastal communities. We submitted an application to the National Lottery Heritage Fund last year, and we were informed earlier this month that we were successful in that, and it's a great win for Dumfries and Galloway because we are the first area to be awarded a grant under this new Heritage Lottery programme of Landscape Connections. We've been awarded a grant, a development grant of £1.4 million for a 2-year development period, matched against another 50% match funding, and we will be working on developing the details of the project over the next 2 years, and then we'll be submitting a stage 2 application to the lottery again, and that will be for a £6.4 million grant. Although that isn't secured yet, obviously they've invested a lot of time and effort into this project, so we're hopeful through the development stage that will lead to a successful delivery bid. As I've said, we do require match funding. Overall, it's a little under 50, well, a little over 50% match funding that is required, and we have a number of themes on the project. It's a holistic project focusing on sort of marine and coastal habitats, and education, community involvement, and lastly but not least, access to the coast. And working with the SWestrans team, we've been, obviously we've invested in a Stantec report to do a business case, I think, which was presented to a previous board meeting. And also, we as a local authority have invested through a study into the potential to invest and to improve the standard of our coastal gateway sites. So basically the coastal car park sites and countryside sites right along the coastline. So the South West Scotland Coast Path project aims to improve the coastal infrastructure along the actual existing core paths, but also to actually look at the missing gaps and negotiate with landowners to see how we can actually, over this next 2 years, to actually come to an agreement where there are gaps to actually put a connecting route between the existing core path network. Also, this will be combined with the core path review, so it's quite fortunate we can do the same over the next 2 years. We can do the same together. So core path review together with the actual development work on the coast path. And at the end of that stage, what we're hoping to have done is to actually get an agreement with landowners where there are missing gaps, identify detailed improvements that are required to bring the network up to a good standard. And that will be for the coastal improvements, that will be up to REBA stage 4 as well. So at the end of the 2 years, what we want is to have the agreements in place, details agreed, and that will be ready once we get agreement from the lottery for the delivery stage to actually put that work out for tender. And what we're planning on is the actual delivery work, the implementation will be over probably about a 5-year period in terms of the wider project. So that's all I would like to say at the moment, and I'm happy to take questions on that.
Thanks very much, Brian, for the update there. Councillor Hislop, either.
Chair, in the past we've had landowner negotiations that have been very protracted, and some haven't always went the way we'd wanted them to. How do you overcome that in this project? Is there options that within it that if we can't get access or there's an obstructive landowner, can we go round about them so that we don't have to just rely on a coastal path, but we can come inshore a wee bit to go back out again? Thanks,
Brian.
Yes, I think the answer to that, Councillor Hislop, yes. We will be looking at options initially where there are gaps, and we'll not be relying just on one route, but looking at how we can actually overcome any obstacles in terms of negotiations.
Yeah, I suppose we're relying on good citizens, helping out for the greater good, shall we say. But no, I do take your point, but Brian obviously covered that. Wally Scobie.
Yeah, Chair, it's along the lines of what I was just asking there about land and land use and obstructions and so forth. And Brian and Jonathan's well aware of the Rins Coastal Pathway and the ambition of the Capmaiden Community Council and ACON to run a marathon from the Mother Galloway to Stranraer. They did the Sandhead to Stranraer last year, and with the help of Jonathan and Brian, that a path was cleared to allow that to happen. But it's the bigger one. I don't know how far we've got with that. Maybe Brian could update us and the support we're given to ACON and Capmaiden Community Council to get the Rins Coastal Pathway open and available for that run.
Thanks, Willie. Brian.
Yes, yeah, we're hoping that the remaining sections will be passable for the planned run later this year. We have started a grass cutting, or vegetation cutting regime on the Rins Coast Path, and this is the sort of the first year that we're hoping to get feedback on that and how we can improve in the coming years on that.
And the landowner that may be obstructing part of that coastal pathway, Brian?
We'll be starting discussions with them, Willie, on that. Yes, it's on my radar, and we're hoping to resolve that.
Best of luck.
Thanks, Willie, and thanks, Brian. Laura Moody, I see you've put in the chat that you wish to speak on item 7, so I'll bring you in.
Thank you, Chair. We think there's a really good opportunity here to interconnect the promotion of bus usage and walking by making sure that information on all the bus routes that touch the coast or run near it are part of the planning and marketing of the project. And it would be really helpful if the project could acknowledge that as an ambition. I note in the section on climate change in the report, it simply refers to reducing car usage, where it might actually be more compelling to say promoting bus usage to get to the path. There's not very much mention of marketing. We might be still at the very early stages of this in the report, but it really should be something that people are considering about promoting it more. And I think, as I mentioned in the last board meeting when we looked at this, 70% of those walking the most popular long distance route in Scotland get there by public transport. So it's a really key demographic to tap into. And it might also mean there's a lot of knock-on considerations about getting bikes on buses and things. I did have one question. I recall from the last report there was a few mentions about match funding coming potentially from the national park. Obviously that's not now happening. Is there any impact on this project from the loss of the national park and the focus there on active travel funding?
Thanks, Laura. No, some good points about the bus connection to some of these. I see Brian nodding. I'll bring you in, Brian, on that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we're wanting to have connectivity with public transport, with buses, and obviously increase cycling as well, and to reduce car usage. In terms of the sort you mentioned promotion and marketing, that will be all part of the wider project and including the actual South West Scotland Coast Path. So we're looking at an interpretation plan, communications plan, promotions plan. So it will be covered in that. In terms of the national park, yeah, it's not happening. We weren't relying on that. There will be other sources of funding. Within this development stage, we've got funding through the Borderlands Growth Initiative, and with it being such a long term project, we're hoping that other funding opportunities will be identified over the coming years.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks for your questions, Laura. So I've got Councillor Hislop in the room.
Now, I know if I ever get to retirement age, one of the things I would like to do is walk the sort of Southern Upland Way. But one of the things that sort of concerns me about doing it is there's not many places to actually stop. You're in the middle of nowhere, and it's getting from the middle of nowhere to a campsite or something. Is there anything planned to actually have like a wee bothies at certain places along this path once it's developed to actually encourage walkers to come and walk the full length rather than maybe just we'll come and we'll walk one and then we have to get a bus or find your relatives to come and pick you up to take you to a town, etc. You know, we seem to put in the path, but the wee things that we need round about it don't seem to actually come, or are they left to entrepreneurs to try and set up businesses to do that?
I think there's a slight difference between the coastal communities because they tend to be a lot closer together. As the Southern Upland Way, you tend to be going over the higher ground, shall we say, and communities tend to be slightly different apart, but that's just my opinion. Brian?
Again, a good question. I suppose we take the approach that we obviously build the infrastructure of the route and promote that, and we do rely on private enterprise, and we hope that the construction of the route will actually stimulate private enterprise such as accommodation, baggage transfer, things like that. The Southern Upland Way is a difficult walk, and I think that's part of the appeal of it, with it being a challenge walk. We don't have as many, if you compare it to the West Highland Way, there isn't as many sort of businesses that, you know, feed into the route. But there are, and it is possible with a bit of research and looking on our DG Trails website, it does have links to the businesses and that. And yeah, the coastal route is different. There are more settlements along the route, and there are more facilities. But it's a good point. I think that will be looked into in the development stage, looking at all the options and how that can you know, stimulate local enterprise as well. And we've taken sort of advice from the Wales Coast Path as well, because there's been quite a few studies on that, where that was a sort of, well, Welsh Assembly initiative to actually get that established. And there's been various studies to actually see how the local economy has been stimulated and businesses set up to actually cater for people walking that route.
Thank you very much. I don't see anyone else wishing to come in, so we'll go to recommendations. So we already agreed one, so 2 is to note 200k funding is required for match funding for next stage in design development of the Gretna to Stranraer coastal path. And 3, agree a progress update from the SCAMP project to be brought to the SWestrans board every 6 months. I'll be happy to note and agree. Yep, nods in the room. Thank you. We'll move on to agenda item 8. This is the Regional Transport Strategy 2025 to 2026 delivery plan. And Simon Bradbury is here to assist members. Have you anything to add, Simon, before I open it up to the floor?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, perhaps just to introduce the report and underline the fact that this year we've tried to work much more in partnership with our colleagues at Dumfries and Galloway Council, who have significant responsibility for the delivery of many of the priorities within the plan. So this year, perhaps for the first year, and keen to do this moving forwards, we want to ensure that we give full recognition of the delivery plans that are in place, particularly from colleagues within transport and infrastructure at the council. However, we're keen not to stop there and to ensure that we fully recognise the contributions of all SWestrans partners and others. And it's exactly for that reason that yesterday Kirsty and I met with Karen Jackson, the Vice Chair, and her colleague at SOSE in order to understand just in a bit more detail the contribution that SOSE in particular can make in terms of the delivery of the regional transport strategy moving forwards. And for that reason, Karen and I agreed that we'd host a workshop session over the summer between the SWestrans team and the SOSE and relevant members of the SOSE team, just to understand in a bit more detail the extent to which SOSE can help deliver the RTS. And in future, then we'll ensure that those contributions are built into the delivery plan as well. And I think there's more that we could do with Stephanie Mottram and colleagues from NHS and Dumfries and Galloway as well, along with other partners in the region. So just to introduce the report with that point, that keen to expand from just beyond the SWestrans team to the council and others in the fullness of time as well.
Thank you for that, Simon. So I'll open it up to questions, comments. Councillor Hislop.
It's one of the in the delivery plan for this year, cycle route improvements. Now, one of the issues I've had from cyclists is the actual state of the roads, you know, potholes, etc., whereby they come off their bikes because they hit potholes and go flying over the handlebars. Will that be in there, or is it just new infrastructure that we get involved in? Because I think that's a big issue, that people are coming to the area. I've seen me take my bike from my house round by Kirton a couple of years ago when I was on COVID sort of leave, and I'll tell you, your posterior gets really sore bumping up and down some of the roads, and it doesn't appeal to me. I like the cycle paths in and about the town. They're good because you've not got traffic running on them to make potholes. But if you're actually using the roads and the cycle routes that are actually on the roads, they can be quite bumpy. So is there any improvements there, or is that just left to the council to address those ones?
Thanks, Ivor. Simon?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Hislop, for the question. I'll pick up with the question first, but apologies to them online. I can't see whether Karen's still in the room or not. But if she were, she may want to come in briefly after this. But I mean, in terms of the delivery plan itself, I've built in as part of Objective 8, which is around supporting safe, effective, and resilient connections to Loch Ryle and other strategic sites, and indeed. Proposal 61 is around improvements to the quality of the road network. And so that's a particular example where this time round we've worked alongside colleagues in the council, particularly within Karen's team, to understand and build in their plans in terms of the road asset management plan and the extent to which that they'll be delivering a programme of road asset improvement activity, including resurfacing and ensuring that we're picking up and addressing issues relating to potholes and areas where there's sort of poor surfacing. Obviously, with over 4,000 kilometres of carriageway across the region, there's a process of prioritisation that inevitably needs to take place, and it's going to continue to be a challenge in terms of keeping all elements of the carriageway at a level and agree of maintenance that all would expect. But it's that programme which Karen may want to touch on in a bit more detail in terms of the degree to which that will contribute to the RTS this year. Thanks,
Simon. Yes, Karen's still in the room. So, Karen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, Councillor Hislop. So the roads prioritisation obviously sits within transport and infrastructure. As Simon's alluded to there. I think where we've tried to get to over the last 6 months in terms of the RTP is that collaborative approach. So board to oversee the action plan of the RTP, which is shared obviously between SWestrans and council. So we have council colleagues on there. The roads manager does sit on that. So what I would like to see going forward is there's that more, joined up approach going forward. We're obviously aware across our roads network that there are significant issues, and the roads team now have a prioritised programme of works that will take time to move forward, and obviously the prioritisation is key there. So appreciate that there are issues across the cycle paths that are directly associated with the roads that aren't separated, and what I would like to see going forward is that collaborative working whereby SWestrans through active travel we can highlight issues and hopefully pick them up in a joined up approach with the roads team. So work in progress, I think. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Karen, and thanks, Ivor, for your questions. I was looking at the plan myself, and I've got a couple of things just to pick out from that. On page 70, in the appendix, it says Transport Scotland is allocating £5 million funding to carry out a feasibility study for the bypass on the A75. I'm just wondering what happened to the £8 million that was coming from the UK government. It doesn't say, clearly states that. Second thing was, on page 72, we've got providing equal access to transport for all, and I think it's the third paragraph down. I particularly underlined that new contracts for the local bus and home to school transport network will commence in August. The contracts have prioritised accessibility for all, but I think my big concern is probably the long distance routes, shall we say. Is there opportunities there for the comfort breaks if they don't have an on-board toilet, for example? So that's just a couple of points. Simon, I don't know if you want to address those.
Thank you, John. Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to respond to those in reverse order. So As you rightly point out, we've ensured that we've incorporated accessibility into those new contracts as much as possible, and in particular for that reason, the route 500, which is the particular long distance route Dumfries to Stranraer, that's one where we endeavoured or certainly attempted to understand whether or not operators were keen to provide vehicles with toilets on that particular long route. In the end, in terms of where we've landed, that's not been possible, but we've incorporated within the timetable a comfort grate, and that's at Gatehouse, in order to ensure that for those passengers that are travelling the full length of the route, there's the opportunity for a comfort break there. That was the one particular route that was flagged to us as in need, so we've addressed that through the procurement process. And on your point around the A75, A77, absolutely happy to update that in terms of the most up-to-date availability of funding, as you mentioned.
Thank you. And just on a final point, page 84, I see we've got the themes and priorities there. We've got the Dumfries and Galloway Council will undertake, this is number 32 by the way, priority 32. Dumfries and Galloway Council will undertake work to develop a business case for DGC buses to become a passenger service. So it's probably a welcome thing that it's already in the regional transport delivery plan that we had that motion. So that's just an observation, by the way. So I'll take either, first of all, Laura, I see you wish to come in on this, but I'll take members of the board first, and then I'll go to observers. So either.
It was back to page 72, the PVG scheme for taxi drivers. Now, going from memory, my son had a coach who was his curling coach, and he wasn't allowed to actually drive children or young people because of the fact that when he was a young man, he'd run into the back of another car, and that was on his record. Now, as someone who sits in the licensing board or licensing panel, we get numerous speeding, etc., offences. So would that actually reduce the number of people who could actually operate as taxi drivers? Because if we put in PVG schemes, it might be the case that most people would either, because of something silly when they were younger, be banned from actually getting a PVG, or it would be on their licence say they could do it but they couldn't carry passengers because they've had a car accident or something.
Simon?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the question. This is one where I'm a little on the edge of my area of expertise, but it's certainly one that we can take away and pick up. In terms of my understanding, the PVG, as with any disclosure scheme, will have different categories, and so in terms of taxi licensing, I would understand that they would be looking at particular categories incorporated within the PVG, which would be of concern. In the particular example that you raised there, that in terms of my understanding, that would not prevent an individual, or certainly should be considered to be included within those categories that wouldn't prevent the licensing of a taxi driver through this process. But that's one we can pick up and take away and discuss in more detail with the licensing scheme to ensure, as you say, that we're not inappropriately limiting the number of people that can drive taxis, whilst obviously ensuring that in terms of safeguarding and public safety, we're incorporating PVG as best and as appropriately as we should.
Thanks, Simon. I've got Laura Moody. Laura?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for highlighting the point about the public service options available to Dumfries and Galloway for running buses. I'm wanting to speak to, it's page 60, Objective 4 2.2.7, basically about the integration of buses and trains. I appreciate we're still sort of ironing out the finer details of all of this, but it is something that's regularly brought up by members of the bus users group. A particular instance this weekend where a train was very slightly delayed and the passengers running to catch the bus, only to see the bus pull away from the stop at the crucial moment, and then having a 3-hour wait. So it is really critical to encourage bus use, that it connects well with onward travel, and that, you know, drivers are encouraged as much as possible to be mindful when they're at transport hubs, that a 30-second wait can make all the difference to people feeling confident in using the bus service. So yeah, that's my main point.
Thanks very much, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your question, Laura. Absolutely, yeah. It was particularly with this point in the regional transport strategy in mind that, in fact, in advance of the procurement exercise we're just completing, we undertook an exercise of a sort of desk-based exercise of the comparison between bus timetables and rail timetables in order to understand the extent to which we can improve on those connections for buses that serve rail stations. As you might imagine, that exercise is fiendishly complicated because of the conundrum that you face in terms of which stops do you include, which routes do you include, what's the cutoff in terms of the degree to which you consider that they serve the stops. In other words, is that within a 1-minute walk or 2-minute walk or a 5 or 10-minute walk? And then to add to that complexity, there's also inevitably a kind of domino effect in that if you change the timings of individual routes that serve rail stations, then that has knock-on implications in terms of other routes, bus routes within which that route is connecting. So it's a complicated task, but there were changes that were made through the procurement process through 2 timetables in order to improve that connectivity. So that's all part of that exercise that we touched upon earlier in terms of updating and providing the passenger information in relation to the revised routes. But we're confident that the travelling public should see improvements in terms of connectivity between bus and train timetables come the new contracts commencing in early August.
Thank you. Has that been helpful, Laura?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to seeing the new timetables.
Great stuff. Don't see anyone else coming in. I've just got a couple of more observations from myself, which is page 74 at the bottom, going into page 75. Obviously, it's to do with the rail station in Stranraer. You know, the push for this project to be progressed as rapidly as possible, and also the mention in the last paragraph, most recently the SWestrans has asked Transport Scotland for funding to carry out a feasibility study using Scottish Transport Appraisal Guidance, which is the STAG, on the Dumfries to Stranraer line. SWestrans is waiting a response in this. I don't know when that was submitted, but have you any update on that as well? Simon, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. We don't have an update on that, but we'll continue to press. This was raised relatively recently, just a couple of weeks ago, in fact, in terms of one of the quarterly rail update meetings that SWestrans has with the relevant train operating companies and Transport Scotland, and it was raised at that point. So I think you're right to point that out, Chair, and we'll make sure that we follow up and give Transport Scotland a nudge on that one.
Thank you very much. So I don't see anyone else wishing to come in, so we'll go to recommendations. The board are asked to consider the actions and interventions in the RTS Delivery Plan 2025-26 and to agree the SWestrans RTS Delivery Plan for 25-26. We're happy to do so. Yep, nods in the room. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to agenda item 9. Transport Focus, Your Bus Journey Survey 2024. Linda Richardson is here to assist. So, Linda, have you anything to add before I open it up?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you very much. So I'll open it up to the floor. Nope. Looks like you're getting away lightly here, Linda. Nobody online? Okay, we'll just go to recommendations. So our members have... Oh, sorry. I see Laura's put her hand up, so I'll bring you in first.
Sorry, it will be very brief. Actually, I just wanted to thank the officers. They've clearly made a real effort to analyse the results of the survey this year and to learn lessons from it. and make really positive use of it. So just wanted to put on the record my thanks for that real serious consideration of the survey. It is much appreciated.
Thanks, Laura, that's been noted. So with that, we'll just go to the recommendations, which members are asked to note the findings of your bus survey of 2024 and to note the areas of improvement identified for the Dumfries and Galloway bus network on the basis of the results. We're happy to note both. Yeah. So we'll now move on to agenda item 10. This is the rail update, and we've got Kirsty Dunsmore here to assist. So Kirsty, have you anything to add before we open it up?
Nothing to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So open to questions, comments. Councillor Hislop.
Chair, it was the West Coast Main Line. I saw something online prior to becoming a board member that there's going to be work further south that might affect trains going to, was it Manchester or that? It's maybe been reported before, but I just didn't notice it unless I missed it within the report. So has it possibly been reported previously?
Kirsty.
Yeah, so that is something that we're aware of, and we will provide further updates to the board on that. We have had a site visit with the other stakeholders that will be relevant for the disruption work that will happen further south, but that will be in January 2026. So we will be reporting it to the board once we have more clarity on the position and in terms of how that will impact the West Coast Main Line, particularly at Lockerbie. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I noticed 4.4, there's a new train service run by Lumo, which is part of the first group. So does that mean that there's now 3 train services that will be stopping at Lockerbie? For example, we've still got Transpennine and Avanti.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So this is an additional service from the middle of 2026. It's anticipated that this will start. So it's additional services at Lockerbie as well as the existing services.
And will there be an opportunity for ScotRail to stop there as well? Because I believe it's the only station in Scotland that ScotRail don't have a train going to.
We continue to lobby ScotRail on that matter, Chair, so we do, and we raise it at our quarterly rail update meetings with Scottish Government as well, but I don't have any update or information on that at the moment.
Thank you very much. So, is there anyone else wishing to come in and speak? No, don't see anyone. Okay, we'll just go to recommendations. So, members of the board are asked to note 1, the programme for government 2025-26, 2, the rail timetable changes, 3, Lockerbie station refurbishment, 4, the West Coast Main Line rolling stock overhaul. Are we happy to do so? Yeah, nods in the room. Thank you very much. We now move on to agenda item 11. This is the Revenue Budget Outturn Report of 2024-25. We have Janet Sutton here to assist. So, Janet, have you anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Thank you very much, Janet. Open it up to members. Don't see anyone online. Nobody in the room. Must be an excellent report, Janice. Thank you very much. With that, we'll just go to the recommendations, which is members of the board are asked to note the financial outturn for 24-25 and that a break-even position was achieved. Happy to note. Now move on to agenda item 12, which is the unaudited annual accounts of 24-25. Again, Janet, this is your report. Anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. Just to report to the board members that on page 249 of the papers, in the 3rd paragraph of the management commentary, the date should read March 2025, not 2024. That was a typo on my fault. Apologies for that. And on page 258, the references to the page numbers, I need to update those. Those 2 changes have been made to the version that will be loaded onto the website and submitted to Audit Scotland.
Thank you very much. I'll open it up to members. Nobody online? Nobody in the room? Okay, we'll just go to the recommendations. Members of the board are asked to note the unaudited annual accounts for the financial year ended on the 31st of March 2025, which will be submitted to the board's external auditors for review and taking on board the additional changes, shall we say. Happy to do so? Yep, nods in the room, silence online. Now move on to agenda item 13, which is the SWestrans Capital Programme Outturn Report 2024-25 and the Capital Programme 25-26 Update Report. We have Simon Bradbury and Gordon Bryce here to assist. Simon and Gordon, have you anything to add? I'll go to Simon first.
Nothing further from me. Thank you, Chair.
We've got a wee issue here. Councillor Scobie's left the meeting, which makes us not quorate. There's only 2 board members. If you can, we'll just take a short break while the clerk tries to get Councillor Scobie back. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience there. We were going on to agenda item 13, so we had Simon and Gordon. I did bring Simon in first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, nothing more to add from me.
Thank you. Gordon, anything to add?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Okay, I'll open it up to questions. Nobody from the floor? Nobody online? Okay, short and sweet. We'll just go to recommendations. So one is to note the outturn position. Two is to note the capital programme for 25-26 to 27-28. And three is to approve funding for the Gretna to Stranraer coastal path in 7.6 and the Lochmaven to Lockerbie path stage 02 feasibility study in 7.7. Happy to note and agree. Thank you. Now move on to agenda item 14, which is the internal audit assurance for 24-25 and the plan. We've got Richard Fox here to assist. Have you anything to add, Richard?
Thank you, Chair. If I could just say a brief introduction that this is our annual report to the board, and I'm pleased to be able to offer the board good assurance on the control systems in place. But I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Opening it up to the board. Nobody online? Oh, Councillor Hislop.
Just to welcome the internal auditor's report and the two items that were of high importance. I think they've been addressed now, so it's moving in the right direction.
Thank you very much. Nobody else wishing to come in? We'll just go to recommendations, which is one, to receive the internal audit manager's assurance report, and two, note and comment on the planned work, which we have done. So happy to note those two. Move on to agenda item 15, which is the observers update. So Claire, this is your report.
And nothing to add, Chair, only to thank those observers that are standing down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I did see Laura Moody want to come in on agenda item 15. Laura?
It's just to note that the change in the board makeup means we're losing 3 men and 2 women and replacing them with 4 men. Women make about a third more bus journeys than men, and I'd request that the board continues to be mindful of the gender bias in its makeup and ensure this is carefully considered when prioritising tasks and considering budget allocations.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, I'm getting nods from Claire. So, yeah, taken on board. So, if there's no one else want to come in, on behalf of the board, I would like to place on record my thanks to those observers who have stepped down after a number of years of supporting the work of SWestrans. So, members of the board are asked to agree the refresh of the SWestrans guidance for observers. Thank former observers June Hay, Hugh McCready, Alistair Marshall, Fraser Smith and Emma Watson for their valued contributions to the SWestrans board for many years. 3, to agree to appoint Luke Graham, Mark Hugan, Douglas Kilpatrick and Stuart Walker as observers to the SWestrans board for a period of 4 years, and note that it is anticipated that there may be further observers update reports presented at the September board meeting. Are we happy to agree? And we did thank. Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to agenda item 16, which is calendar of meetings for 2026. Claire, this is your report. Anything to add?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Open it up. Nobody wishing to come in? Okay, we'll just move on to recommendations. Members of the board are asked to agree the calendar of meetings. We're happy to do so. Yep, nods in the room. So, item 17, any other business deemed urgent by the chair. I do not have any other business, as intimated at the start of the meeting. 18, 19 have been withdrawn. I would like to thank you all for your attendance. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a nice weekend. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.